Good morning, everybody. We will call the meeting to order for Tuesday, December 3rd, 2013. And our first item is the approval of the agenda, and we do have an addition.
Move to approve with additions.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Carried. Employee recognition. Carol Beckstrom. Could you go up here? 15 years.
Only 40 years.
For 40 years.
Oh.
You might not believe it, I was 4 years Okay. 40 years for Carol Beckstrom. I think she started in junior high when she was.
Absolutely.
This is presented in grateful recognition of 40 years of outstanding and dedicated service to Clay County and its citizens. And Carol, we thank you for your years of service and all you have done.
Well, thank you
You
so
are
much.
one neat lady.
Thank you.
Is Mary Lumen Olson here?
Mary, she is not here.
Are you going to?
I will.
Okay. Mary has been with us for 35 years. And again, we appreciate all she has done. And Rhonda will give this to you, our Social Services Director, and it says the same as it does for Carol. Thank you. Susie Rimble, social worker, 20 years of experience. And I see you know how to spell Susie correctly. Susie I, right? Yes. Thank you and congratulations. I hope you've had fun in all your time with us.
Yes, I have.
Good. Okay, thank you. Gail Burnside has been with us for 15 years. Good morning, Gail.
Good morning.
Saw you earlier. And this says what it does for everybody else. We thank you for your service all those years and appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Cheryl Sapp? Is it pronounced Sapp or Sapp?
Yes, it is.
Okay. You have been with us 15 years, and again, we thank you for all you've done. Public health nurse.
Thank you very much.
Oh, that's something else. There you go.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl. Michelle, you didn't get anything this morning, I guess, did you?
Best is yet to come.
Okay. And now, Excellence in Performance Club, Michelle Hughes. But you do get one, don't you? Turn around so everybody can see you. Michelle Hughes, Case Aid, Social Services. And this is written, I would think, by your supervisor. Michelle has gone above the expectations of the agency given a state-mandated rate conversion, which proved to be complicated and very time-consuming. Michelle worked one-on-one with a provider to assist in completing the work. She has taken numerous phone calls with questions and always responds in a timely and respectful way. Michelle was willing to come in on a vacation day in order to complete the work. Speaks very highly of her. There you go, and thank you so much.
Mr. Chair, that's a lot of years' worth of experience from the Social Services Department.
You saw that coming, didn't you?
No, I was just going to comment, that's a lot of experience. That's good to have, and thank you all for all those years. I think that adds up to like 110 years of service between the four of you. Well, you're the leader of the band.
But you're all having a great time, right? Okay. Well, we will continue on, and are there any citizens to be heard in the audience on any item that is not on the agenda? Next is to approve payments of bills and vouchers.
Here, I move to approve.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The bills are paid for another week. Next item is the approval of minutes of November 8th, 19th, and 26th, 2013 meetings.
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Approved. Passed. Okay, it looks like we're a little early, so Frank, can we go to you for committee reports?
I had one meeting last night, Eggsy Recreation Trails, just a approved contract for the grooming for the next year. That's the only item on the agenda, so.
Okay. Kevin, are you ready?
Yeah, I think it's going to be short because I think with Thanksgiving week last week, I had no meetings. I did not. I have nothing to report.
John?
The only meeting that I had was Planning Commission, and we expected it to be a quick meeting. We only had one hearing, but it turned out to take a couple hours for it. You never know with Planning Commission. And it was, we finally approved the request out near Glendon for an event center. And some opposition from, or concern from neighbors there made it an interesting discussion, but we, as a commission, finally agreed to approve it. So that was the only thing.
Chief?
The only thing I had was a law library meeting yesterday, and Jenny's doing such a good job ramrodding that we have no issues, so it's just going smoothly. So
Okay.
I did have a phone call from a concerned citizen last week about the wheelage tax, my first call, so I'm sure we'll be getting more of those people unhappy that, they have to pay an additional tax over here for that, so. But
I hope they did notice that in a lot of their cases, their property taxes are going down. And yet we still need to fix our roads and how.
yeah, I
how
explained that.
how
I
do we-
explained that to
yeah.
this person, and
I think I had the same call.
they seemed satisfied with that after I got them explaining it to them. But his concern was that they didn't know that it was coming. So until he went in to renew his license plate. So
I had no meetings. Let's go to the number 3 on the agenda, request to submit grant for property record information system. County Assessor Nancy Gunderson and First Lady of Clay County, Lori Johnson. Would you ladies come up here, please? Good morning.
Take it away.
Okay. PRISM. It stands for Property Record Information System of Minnesota. The Department of Revenue has been working on this for many, many years, and now this past year, they really have taken hold of it, and they have been working really hard to get this going. What this means is currently, between our two offices, we submit about 9 different abstracts of either assessment information or tax information to the Department of Revenue. And it's in a summary form. With this change to being a more parcel-by-parcel basis, they feel they can do a better reflection and information gathering for legislature if there's a change to any kind of policy that they'd like to enact. And so they are changing then this format. This grant dollars was set up through legislation this past session of $300,000, and it's for counties to get dollars to help with changes as far as programming. So Clay County would like to request part of those funds, and this is the grant application. It's very simple and straightforward, and to help with the costs of the vendors who will now need to do this programming change for us.
She covered it really well, and like she said, the vendors are going to incur some costs for additional programming, and of course that will be passed along to the counties. And since our consortiums aren't entities, they can't apply for the grant, so every individual county has to apply for the grant separately.
John?
Gosh, this must be a long time. I've heard of PRISM for years. I mean, how many years has it been? Is it going to be obsolete before you get it? I mean,
Well, I hope not.
No, this has just been going on for a few years. There was a different PRISM, I believe, in the child support area too,
Oh.
so that was
Okay.
many years ago.
It
And
still,
so-
still exists.
and still exists, but this is the property tax,
Okay,
or property records.
okay.
Need action on that?
So this grant, they're going to just divvy up based
I
on...
think so.
I think whoever applies, they'll just divvy it that many, between that many people. So.
And do we know what our costs would be?
We really don't, we don't have any idea what those programming costs are going to be.
Okay.
So, they're not going to have to redo how the data is made, but just how it's compiled.
Could we assume that the grant's not going to cover it all, or will it cover it all?
I would assume it probably won't. It's $300,000 for the entire state. And there's many different softwares that are being used, so it'll have to supply or provide for all of those.
And is there a timeline when this has to, so all counties have to go to this? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Our first submission will be the fall of 2015, I believe.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I would move that we approve the request for submitting the grant.
Second.
Discussion.
Is every county going to have to do the same thing? Do they all submit?
Well, I mean, you can submit the grant if you wish. You're not required to, but if you don't submit this grant application, then you don't get any funds reimbursed.
I was just wondering why there wasn't just an automatic distribution. Whatever, okay.
Makes more sense.
Forget it, I don't want to make sense.
All in favor of the motion, say aye.
You gotta remember where it's coming from, Frank.
Okay. Yeah, Lori, could you stay for a moment? I want to go to number 2 regarding late fees.
Yes, we had a tax payment come in, and it did come in late. It came in on the 21st. However, we found out that their son-in-law had been killed in a car accident, and so they did pay the penalty, but we're requesting that that be waived.
Okay, my question is, when were the taxes due?
The 15th on this one,
15th of October?
November 15th. The ag lands are due on November 15th, so.
Thank you.
Well, Mr. Chair, and members, to me, this does meet exactly the criteria, and one of the few criteria that we had established to allow for relief. And I certainly think that we should request that. And so I would move that we remove the penalty portion of her statement, of their statement, excuse me.
Would you call the roll, Vicki, so we can have oral record of this?
Aye.
Yes.
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 Yes. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, it would have been then.
Yeah, okay. Robbie, I know how much you love to come in front of the board. Request to fill custodian 1 position are from our building maintenance director, Robbie Norman. Good morning, Robbie.
Morning.
How are you doing?
How are you?
Good. Go ahead.
Well, we have a gentleman who is retiring from our department. He works in the law enforcement center, and it's a shared position with the city. I guess we would just like to request authorization to go ahead and refill that position.
Okay, and would that be backfill if you hire from within?
Well, yeah, if we hire from
If
within.
you, okay, if that's the case, that's part of what you're asking for.
Right.
I had just a question about the city also has to act on this then, if it's a joint
No,
position?
No.
Okay, we do the hiring.
We do the hiring,
But
yeah.
they reimburse us or something?
right,
We just bill them for the service.
right.
Okay, I would move that we honor the request.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Carried. Thanks, Robbie.
Thank you.
Nice and easy.
That was easy, huh?
How's things going on the 15th Avenue project?
Motor vehicle.
Motor vehicle.
I think pretty well.
Good.
They were out there again yesterday, the architect was, and
Okay.
did some more looking, and yeah,
Going to start knocking things down pretty soon?
pretty quick.
Good.
Pretty quick, yeah. So, I'm sure about just about every day.
Good deal.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Thanks, Robbie.
Thank you.
Brian, you're up for item number 5.
Okay.
Did you want to, this is different from what's coming up Thursday, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Discussion regarding 2013 revenues and expenses to date, and our administrator, Brian Burke.
Lori's going to join me too, I think. She likes to help out, with numbers.
Well, that's kind of, you should know that.
She repeats it in her sleep, I think.
I wake up seeing numbers. I do, and it's sad.
I do too, and it's really sad.
Yeah.
That's just the same sheet you got back in the end of August when we approved the preliminary budget. Here's what we'll be discussing today. Good morning, Mr. Chair and other board members. What we want to do today is kind of touch base on some of the issues concerning the budget. We're closing in on your final approval of the budget, and also we have the TNT public meeting Thursday night, so we wanted to go over some things referenced there. But we'd like to start out with the 2013 revenues and expenditures, mostly the expenditures that we're going to talk about. Revenues we don't control quite as much, and they lag behind, but what we can have control over is the expenses that are occurring during the year. So what I have there is just listed the page numbers, and then I've highlighted the points that we're going to talk about. Certainly willing to ask any questions, and if you see something, please bring it to our attention. We do really appreciate that. But on page 2, technology services and information services, you'll see that technology services is running behind on expenditures, which of course we always like to see, but not necessarily. We want an accurate budget. Information services is ahead. If you remember, though, we split those two agencies about in March of this year and split the budgets, and it takes a little while to figure those out. They're still within line. Tim's still covering Mark's expensive taste, so. But it is evening out, so we're doing okay there. You'll see the rest of them pretty much fall in line and are quite closely. Even the Board of Commissioners running 88%, and that's going to be a little bit behind than the 92% because not all are in as of the end of the month, but pretty close. We're pretty comfortable with that. Really staying close to what was budgeted all the way down. General government as a whole is at 86, and we're comfortable with that. I can't say that that's totally accurate to the day, but very close, Lori assures me. So highlighted law enforcement, that's one of our bigger budgets. They're also in good shape for the year on the expenditures. Medical examiners, you'll see 129% of budget. It's pretty difficult to control the number of autopsies that are performed, and Matt told me that he has budgeted more for next year, so you'll see an increase in the medical examiner's line next year because they just ran over on the autopsies that were
Brian, when
required.
you say next year, you're talking about 15?
2014. This is 2013's
Yeah, I know,
expenditures.
but we've already,
Well, that was in the, you're saying
it was already in the budget.
In the preliminary budget, an increase for 2014,
Yeah,
yes.
okay.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
at this point, you can't add anything more to it.
Well, we can move things around, you know, if we felt we needed to add a little more there. And Safe and Sober, they only spend what they receive, so they have obviously received more revenue than, and this is only showing the expenditures, so that's it there.
The revenues just aren't in yet, is it?
Well, they could be in, but this is just expenses right here.
Wow.
Yeah.
So,
On page 3, I highlighted corrections. Again, it's a bigger budget, as you'll see. The current budget is $3 million for corrections. They're running well within their budget. Julie has told me, though, that, you know, towards the end of the year, when they are reducing the bed size, they had to move out a block, which was more out of county boarding of prisoners. So that's going to increase a little bit towards the end of the year, but she's in good shape for that. So then I just highlighted the overall public safety and corrections is running well within the limit on page 3. Page 4, that includes all of them. The only one I highlighted there was the general revenue, just to hopefully reassure you that out of the $19.6 million budget, the expenditures have been $15.8 million, and that's about 81%. I know we're at 92% of the year, but that lags behind, so we're good in that category, we feel. Page 5, that jumps to the highway, and I know the members of the Highway Committee receive an update basically monthly from Dave on that, as I do. The only one that's our concern there was the number of fuel that we used last spring. We got hit with snow right after the first of the year and just continuously. But Dave feels that things are falling in line there. It's going to be a pretty good year as a whole. The only thing that's running ahead is highway construction, and of course you approved a bond for last year that is increasing the construction, and he feels very comfortable that things are running within his prescribed budget as well. Construction season is basically over with now, too. Social services.
Brian, I got a question.
Okay.
Excuse me. Wouldn't the fuel go under highway maintenance? And why is that low? It's 75.
Fuel does go under highway maintenance. I don't have their individual budget breakdown here at the table with me, but their fuel is running just about 100%, or maybe they've even gone over. They went over on overtime and fuel, but I do know that the gravel, there's about an $800,000 budget item for gravel, and they were slightly behind on that. I think they were in the 600 and some, so that really helps even off the rest of it.
Lori, isn't the, under the highway construction too, don't we run into some instances where the expenses are shifted from year to year? Is this one of those line items?
This will be one of those, and we did increase that budget for next year because of the bonds that we issued. And so we're running a little high on that because we didn't know we were going to issue bonds ahead of time, so we expected them to run over.
But my point was, some projects might not even get expensed out until the following year or something?
It just depends on when the work was done.
Right.
So generally, they do get expensed, but the revenue doesn't get recognized is
Right.
our biggest issue
Right.
because unless it's in that allotment year, we can't recognize the revenue.
So this 117% that we're at of budget, was that comparing the actual projects that we wanted done, or did it include additional items, say, that might have been carryovers from 2012?
There shouldn't have been any carryovers, because generally we complete the projects.
Okay.
There might be a few lingering contracts, but generally there isn't too much that carry over as far as the expense of the contract. So it should be mostly from the bond issue. And
So if there was a carryover, Lori, and we, for example, we paid something in January of 2013 or February of 2013 for a 2012 project, would that expense still go back to the 2012, or would it go into the
2012.
It would, okay.
Yep.
Okay.
up to March 1st or something like that.
No,
correct?
payables we do, we
All the
run
way
into,
through?
depending on how,
Okay.
the materiality of it. So if it's a small one, we won't recognize it back, but if it's a large expenditure, we will.
At some point, your year closes.
Oh,
I
of
mean, you
course,
can't-
but, generally March is like when we try and cut off, but if there's a really big one that runs a little bit later, we will accrue it back.
Okay. Mr. Chair, on page 6, you'll see social services, and that doesn't tell you a whole lot. They've got, about a $17.2 million budget. They've expended about 14.4, which is about 84% of the budget. And I'll just refer you to the next 2 pages, because that's the statement, and I don't know if Rhonda's in here right now. I think she is. She said she'd be our backup, so she's here. I have a little narrative from Rhonda, and then also she has 2 spreadsheets that she shows the breakdown of the programs and what she has expended and what the revenues are in that program. But I think the important issue is here that she feels, if you remember last year, you approved the expenditures of $7,900,000 in social service budget. Of that was 7.456 of levy dollars, and then you allowed $450,000 of reserves if they were needed. And she is telling me that as of right now, her best guess, and we're into December, so we're getting close to the end of the year, that she doesn't feel she'll have to use any of that $450,000. So she'll be right on target. And if you remember, you approved a $7.9 million budget for 2013, and she's made adjustments to the tune of $7.7 million, which is about a $200,000 reduction for the 2014 budget. And I know you're interested in that and looking forward. So she's made about a $200,000 reduction in the requested for funds for 2014. So she's got the expenditures and the percentages highlighted there in red, but I thought that's the issue that we would be most interested in that. And certainly entertain any questions that you may have there. It's a big budget, a lot of dollars, and if we can't answer them, Rhonda's here to help us out. So, okay, moving on from that, then on page 15 is the public health budget. That is a little, there's different figures that will show up in our county expense record than what public health keeps over there. You're showing a 96% expenditures, but they are keeping a budget. This reflects what was approved last year, and I think in their budget, they reflect the budgeted amount plus the $250 that were allowed to be spent from the reserves. And again, I'll just refer you to the page behind that, a statement from Kathy and Mary on that is, and what I was inquiring about mostly there is that you authorized $500 and some thousand of county levy dollars, but then you also authorized $250,000 out of reserve for expenditures. And what they are telling me, earlier in the couple months ago, they were saying that they were on track to expend about $60,000 of the $250,000 of reserves. And the statement here right now is based on their current calculations. It does not appear that they will use any of the $250 carryover. So that's also good news for us. So, and then they have a breakdown on the second page there as well. So they appear to be going to be right on the money of the approved dollars. And then the others, I believe, are just basically information. Yep, that's, the others are, the solid waste, which is at 51%, usually budgeted in there for some purchase of property and things that hasn't happened, and juvenile center is on pace. So to try to, any questions on the expenditures? I think we're
Really good news.
Yeah, I think we're right on target, frankly, and it's very good news with the reserves that hopefully will not have to be used.
I guess I can't, what I was kind of looking for here was the report that really shows us, not only on the expenditure side, but on all sides of it, how much revenues over expenditures are we looking at or anticipating? Because, again, it goes back to my conversation about the last 3 years. That number has been in the area of $2 to $3 million each year.
Yeah.
And I'm just curious as to where we are this year in the grand scheme of things. I'm glad to hear that everybody is on track with their in their expense categories, and they're pretty much staying within their budgets. But oftentimes where we find big surprises is we end up getting better revenues than we had anticipated.
Right.
And, so with that, how many years do we keep putting a whole bunch of money into the bank? And then if we're going to start putting that money in the bank, maybe we should start designating some of it for important purposes for the future. You're smiling over there.
No, I think that's where everything, when we find some money, that's where it's going to go.
I think that's that's a real good question. And in looking at the expenses that we've identified there, and like I said, revenues lag so much. They're probably in the 60% range right now, so it's really hard to match those up with the expenditures to see if revenues are up. I know that one program that Rhonda identified is they've been cut $130,000 in a program, and they reduced some expenditures and things, and as they go along. But looking at the expenditures right now and the revenues, I think we're going to come pretty darn close this year. I don't think there's going to be a great deal of surplus. We'd like to say, let's hope for $1 million surplus, because that's not a whole lot. But we'd really like to be right on the money, either way, a few $100,000 over or under, because that's accurate budgeting, and that's where we want to be. But I think we're going to be close.
Yeah, but we don't have anything in front of us to show us what that looks like right now.
It's been run, so it's...
Yeah, I you can run it, but that's the report I like to see.
Yeah, okay, I do have the revenues, but they're so far behind.
We have to take that into consideration, but,
Okay.
it's I guess I'm a little surprised at your statement that we should be right on track this year. We did increase our expenditure budget in 2013, right?
Yes.
And we took into consideration any potential reductions that might have come from, especially in Rhonda's area on the revenue side, where the revenues because Rhonda was very good about providing that information to us, or her concerns or lost revenues might be. But I still think, with the level of work that went done into this budget, I still don't see how we're going to be all of a sudden going from a $3 million revenues over expenditures to a break-even year. I just don't understand where that's coming from. So I guess I'm because we kind of included in our levy system the increases in expenditures that we had. We covered COLAs, we covered insurance increased costs, those were all put into our budget. We included, as Rhonda was very good about, and warned us even to some degree about, if we levy this, we've got to remember these revenues might come in low. And all said and done, we might end up better than last year in terms of comparing revenues and expenditures more closely. But I still think that eliminating that gap of $3 million, I don't see it.
Yeah.
So unlike you, I'm going to predict we're going to still come out with revenues over expenditures probably $1.5 to $2 million.
Oh, okay.
That's just off the top of my head. I'm not saying it out here.
Well, a couple of factors that did occur last year, if I may, Mr. Chair. One thing, we were cut aid by $622,000, and then we also financed the budget by $700,000 out of reserves for, to fall back on. So I think you're taking those into consideration.
I am.
I'm taking
them into consideration. And that's why I didn't say $3 million.
Is this going to be in the board minutes then?
Well, it's in the recorded minutes.
Well, I see what you're saying, in $1.5 million. If it was $1 million over on a $60 million budget, that's not too big of a percentage off. I'd rather be a little over, I guess, in our estimates than under. But, either if we're under or over by a little, that's what budgeting is all about. It's the best guess that we can come up with on it. So
my message on it is, and it has been for the last couple of years, is when we go through things and we struggle over what things during the course of a budget process that we should cut.
Yep.
I think to an area that was close to John and I deals with in the extension area where we didn't fund that.
Yeah.
And now we find out that, we keep getting these revenues over expenditures. Maybe it could have been funded and it wouldn't have had any additional impact to the taxpayer. Because what it amounts to is when we have those kind of increases in revenues over expenditures, we just stuff the money in the bank. I don't know what else we do with it. Right? It goes in the bank.
Well, we got some major projects coming up we'll have to use it for.
Well, yeah, but we should be counting on and planning for those major projects on their own, not just relying on, maybe we'll have an extra buck left over from one year and we can now apply it to this. That's where we're going with this whole new jail deal. We're trying to come up with a serious plan on how we're going to deal with the financing and construction of that thing that makes sense. And not just, if we had depend on paying for that with, did we have revenues over expenditures this year? Okay, well, I guess we can dump that into the jail.
Well, I'm not saying that that's the only thing we rely on, but I'm saying that we certainly, that's how we can use it. We're blessed to have it. I mean, that's,
but it's also, there comes a point where, others can use it too, I guess.
Well, and Mr. Chair, I think, I know your observations are certainly based on historical fact, and to some degree, I think very accurate, because we have right now about 8 positions that are vacant in the county that we're trying to fill, and that it isn't going to save us a lot of money in 2013 because we have severance payouts and things, but we have budgeted for those to be replaced in 2014, and they're probably budgeted at a higher amount than, and in fact, I think what Robbie brought before you this morning was that there may be about an $8,000 savings in that position alone in 2014. But we don't know that when the position hasn't been hired and different things. So I think you're right. I mean, and I think that's where you're going, is there may be some more room in that 2014 budget. And we've met with just about every department head. You've had many of them in front of you, and we have went line by line on that budget. We try to hold them very accountable for their expenditures so that they don't run over, but we don't want them to run under a great deal either and draw down on that reserve.
And a lot of times you could have, not a lot of times, but you could have somebody unexpectedly retire who's at the top of the pay scale, 2 or 3 or 4 people like that, and all of a sudden you were for the next year you're hiring at a much lower amount, and there is a surplus.
Right, and that's what I think we're going to see for 2014. I think we're going to see some savings in the budget for
well, Kevin, I understand from an accounting perspective, you're used to having it hard and fast as to what your income is compared to your expenses, but I in 20 years here, I have not seen where that's possible here. It's much more flexible and uncertain as to what our income is going to be. I'm much more comfortable that we're looking at most of these numbers that are slightly under what's expenses should be at this point than if they were right on, because they're right on, then we're taking a chance of being over at the end. So I'm very comfortable with this. I think we've done a good job, and I'm pleased that both Public Health and Social Service are projecting now that they will not have to use that money that we had said they could use out of reserves if they needed to. And I think that's a good way to do it. I think that's a good way to budget, saying if things are overrun, we've got the reserves for it, and I'm comfortable with that.
Well, and part of the reason for the social service increase too, in those years, we thought that some of those state and federal dollars were going to be cut. So we budgeted for those to be cut, and then we actually got those. That's not happening now, correct?
Right, yeah. I mean, yeah, there were some large ones over the years that were cut mid-year, and we tried to accommodate and put back in. In addition, we had all that stimulus money too, which I think was unplanned, so that was a couple years of stimulus funds.
I'll stand by my statement, what I think it's going to be.
I think it's a very valid.
And I don't think, and it's not a bad thing. It just seems to me that, you know, when we're going in the budgeting process before the preliminary hearing was set, there was some who felt we needed to even put more into the preliminary than what we ultimately ended up doing. And the argument I felt was we didn't need to do that because of the historical trends. And I think those historical trends will continue, but not to the level that they were the last 3 years because of the issues that, like Lori just brought up.
We're getting closer then.
I think we're getting closer.
We're getting closer. There's no question. We're getting closer.
Yeah.
Okay,
No, we'll see.
thank you.
I think we are.
Thank you. Then, if you, then on the 2014 budget, which I guess we really had some discussion with, Mr. Chair, which is very, very good. It's nice to know how you folks feel on these things, and we can adjust accordingly. And it's your budget, and we want to honor your requests and where you want to be at with it. Lori, and in fact, it was Commissioner Campbell brought that question up on one of our sessions, was how much are we adding, because we have to pay out those abatements. That's what the program was set up for, is that we collect the tax and then we pay it out. So we have to budget for that. She projects about $27,000, because that started September 1st, 2012. So we will have some abatement dollars that we'll have to pay out. She has projected $27,000 to do that. We also,
And excuse me, that becomes like a line item then, doesn't it, on our books, where, because we've collected the revenue, but then we're paying it back.
Correct, yep.
Yeah.
yep. So, but we have to budget, put that in the budget.
Yeah.
And also, we did, there was some strong discussion that we wanted that around $50,000 in the capital jail fund. So we have also added $8,500 to the $42,500 to make that even $50,000 in that capital jail fund. And that $35,500 has been removed from Public Health's request of dollars with their approval. They have reduced in other words, they've reduced their request of dollars to the county, another $35,500. So the levy still remains the same, and that's why I provided the single sheet handout, so that you would know and be refreshed as to what the summary of the 2014 proposal was. And that was a spread levy of $25,151,532, I think, as the resolution says. This says 531. So anyway, that's where we are on that. And remember, I guess, too, that we are coming to the board on December 17th for a final budget approval. So, I'm thinking of Commissioner Campbell's comments and concerns that, if we want us to, I know you want us to continually look at that, but see where it's at. We're certainly willing to do that as well. And then, if you want to go to the next item down in the bottom there, I have a general real estate tax on an agricultural example. And if we go towards the back, I don't think I have a page number on it, but it's about second or third from the back. Maybe it's the second page from the back. And I have it labeled up there, general real estate taxes only. I'm not going to take credit for this. This is something I worked with Nancy on, Gunderson, our assessor, and it came as a result of the township officers meeting. I think it's a good example, and I just wanted to show it to you for your understanding and to see if you want to talk about this at all Thursday night. I know Thursday night is not about values, it's about the taxes, but it seems like it always runs towards that direction. But one of the concerns at the township meeting was the fact that the taxes keep going up and up and up we're talking, this is agricultural, and if you'll see, if the very top line of this example, you see pay, and that P stands for pay 2002, on this 400 acres, this value, the estimated market value, the assessor's office value was $501,900, and they paid tax of $4,000, and the tax rate was at 0.8% for that year. And if you jump down to 2014, that's 12 years, now the assessed value on that 400 acres of land is $1.88 million. That's more than a triple increase. The tax on that 400 acres is $9,000 projected for 2014 if all of the budgets stay where they're at, projected to. And if you go to the second to the last column, that is a rate of 4.48. So as you see from 2002, the rate is not quite half of what it was back in 2002, but near there. So as the values have gone up, the rate of pay on it has decreased considerably. Had they stayed at the same rate, that tax would be much, much higher than $9,000. So even though the tax has gone up, it would, yes, it would have. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. So I think this is a real good value. And if you want to get into a little more detail of it, you see over on the total right column, there's that homestead limit of $1.5 million. Well, this example of the 400 acres and for pay 2014 of 1.88, they pay 0.5 or 0.5% on the first $1.5 million, but anything over the 0.5, they pay 1%. And even on which we would consider 400 acres a small farm nowadays, they exceed the break on the Homestead Act of $1.5 million. So that causes their taxes to jump as well. And now I realize...
the portion that's over and above the 1.5, right?
That's exactly right. Yep, that's exactly right.
Does that 1.5 go up each year? I mean...
It has been.
I was under the understanding that, if land values go up so much of a percentage, then under the homestead, that goes up the same percentage, sort of? Or
It's not keeping up with the rate of increase in ag land. You can see that it's just not keeping up.
So Lori, would this be safe to say that on this scenario here, looking at 2014, this landowner on this 400 acres that would have $388,000 worth of value that would now be taxed at a higher rate? Is that
Right.
correct?
Yep,
And
and
that would be
basically that's double.
That portion doubles.
And if he had 600 acres, his total tax would more than double.
Right.
Or would double.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep. And in this particular example, we have some additional to it, but it complicated it a little more. They started out with 400 acres, then they added a 200-acre parcel and another 200-acre parcel. And that 200-acre parcel that was added pays about the same amount of tax as the 400, just what you just said, Commissioner Everett. But going back to Commissioner Gross, that right column there,
Yeah.
where you see it says 790,000, then it goes to 1 million, then it goes to 1.14. That's the legislature moving that homestead exemption up each year. But as you can see, when you go over to the estimated market value from pay 2013 to pay 2014, it jumped over $400,000 in value, which was a 31% increase in that ag land, and the legislature isn't keeping up with a 31% increase.
I thought it was going up
in
the
that.
same percentage or
No.
something. I mean,
No,
we're supposed to.
yeah.
I mean, they could, each year they
They
could
could.
change that.
Well, that would be really hard to do because you could have one northeast part of the state having
Yep.
really high land values going up and another part going down. So how
Yep.
the legislature can't start dictating, well, we're going to have a rate for them over here, another rate
Yep.
for them over here.
That's right.
We might see really increased property values in our part of the state because of all the things that are going on, whereas in the opposite corner of the state, things could be the opposite, and the numbers could be going the other way.
What we're seeing here is a real tax shift, though. I mean,
There's no question there's a tax
going
shift.
on to the farmers and homeowners, actually, you're seeing a decrease because of it. So.
And you'll see that with the next example, the next page. There is definitely in this county a tax shift from the resident to the agriculture, the farmer. There's no question about it.
And that is action done at state level, not county level.
Well,
Other than the values are
there you
created.
go.
Well, and
That's what's dictating it.
Yeah,
No.
the increase in value, the skyrocketing ag values, that's what's creating that shift.
Our assessor is required to be within 90 to 105% of the market value of these properties. They have to do a check on the sales that occur each, I don't want to say quarter, is it quarter or is it twice a year? They do an evaluation of what the sales have been, and the state comes out and audits, the Department of Revenue comes out and audits those sales as well. And so their evaluations have to be within 90 to 105%. And I know sometimes there's a feeling, well, the assessor could keep the market values low. No, they can't. They have to be within that range to stay within the legalities of it. So anyway, if we move on to the next page, this is Moorhead, and this is, credit Lori with this. This is Lori's spreadsheet. And maybe I'll go through it. She can certainly answer any questions on it, but she understands this stuff so well that I go a little bit slower with the explanation so that maybe all of us can understand it, because she'll just say, well, it's right there.
Yeah, I read paper.
She knows this stuff. She knows this stuff. But what you have here is you have the, on the left-hand side, the market value, and then the tax capacity and things. But you'll see the first two columns up on top, there's a 2013 and a 2014 on the first two columns. So it's just comparing, what we're showing there is that we're comparing a home that is valued, let's say if we go down to the middle of the page, $165,000 in 2013, and it's valued at $165,000 in 2014. And then it shows the different taxes and different things, but what you'll see is the change of $64.27. That's a reduction of 3%. So from 2013 to 2014, if you have a home that's valued at $165,000 in the city of Moorhead, your taxes are going down by 3%. Now, as
That's the county's portion.
No, that's
That's the entire tax.
That's
Well,
the
that's
entire
every school
tax.
district and everything?
Yep.
That's right.
It's all calculated, okay.
Right, now we'll move, well, through those, about first five columns, that's for 2013. If you move over to 2014, if you look at the top of the page, it'll say 2014 proposed tax. And if we stay with that $165,000 value, now you'll see up there on the top in the red boxes, it says county, school,
There we go, okay.
and city, and EDA, and watershed.
Okay.
If you move down that column, that $165,000 property for the county tax saw a reduction of 6.72% reduction in their taxes. The school saw a 7.88% reduction in their taxes. And I think it's very interesting, if you go up three columns, the county tax for 2014 on a $165,000 home is $702.30, and the school is $723, just almost identical. Then if you move to the city, in the city, now these aren't proposed, they haven't finalized their budget, but they're showing that in the city of Moorhead, that their tax is going to go up $48 on their city portion, which is a 9.62% increase on that home. Overall, their tax will be reduced by 3%, but for the city portion, it goes up 9.62. And on the EDA, very small amounts, so it can fluctuate a great deal. It's a 40% increase. And you'll see the watershed reduces by 20%. So I went through it kind of slow because when you look at this, it's kind of helpful to see what the tax is. So you're seeing the tax in Moorhead go down by 3%, and you're seeing the tax in the agricultural. It'll vary depending upon the value of that increase, but the example we saw was a 31% increase in the valuation, and you saw a 26% increase in their property taxes on that 400 acres, but there was a lot of things that figured into it. So
So on the, Lori, on the EDA, because you're looking at these are properties within Moorhead. So
Just
this
City
is
of Moorhead.
This is Moorhead's EDA.
Correct.
Not the county's EDA.
That's right.
That would look different for
Right, and ours was
a
the
home in
HR.
Oakport or in
Right.
Dilworth.
And actually, if this was a Clay County, the EDA would be, I have an HRA column.
HRA.
And last year that was 0. So that would be 100% increase, so,
Yeah.
because we didn't have one last year.
And we did this year.
Right.
So hopefully, and I guess I was showing that is, do you want that example explained? That's not a levy issue, it's a valuation issue on Thursday night. We don't want to confuse the two, but it seems like that's what the people are a little questioning as the valuation sometimes, but I don't know if we want to get into that or not.
Well, that's the complicated part. I mean, that's what they don't understand.
That's the, there's two pieces to it. We can just sit and talk about the levy, and then they have the questions about values, and so this kind of coincides with how values equate to. I don't know.
But I
Might not
think-
be a bad thing to have.
I think the responses to the people who are here on Thursday have to be brief, to the point, and not get into taking a look at something like this for some people might be overwhelming. And maybe something up on the screen, we could give a couple of brief examples about why it's going up, the value as opposed to the tax. That might make a big difference. John?
Well, I think I disagree. I think this is excellent. I think this really explains it.
To us, it
clear.
does.
Well, I think
Yeah.
people are intelligent enough to figure that out, if it's explained to them, I think.
I think the people that are coming here to these meetings are trying to understand, they're trying to figure it out. They have questions and they're interested in getting answers. That's why they come here. So anything that we can offer them that, John, I agree with you. I think anything that we can offer to them that, if it takes another 10 minutes to go over it, it takes another 10 minutes, but at least hopefully they'll walk away feeling a little bit better about it than.
I think rural residences, not farmland, but residences in the rural area, will see even greater drop, will they not, than this 3%, because they don't have the 9% increase from the
Right.
city or the EDA 40% increase. So I think there they would see a greater.
Probably more in the 10% range
Yeah,
decrease.
yeah.
Is there a thing where the percentages, I look at the market value of these houses, you got examples from 125,000 to 415,000. The percent of increase or decrease of everything is still the same, no matter which
It is
column
on
you
an
go.
individual basis, but when you look at it overall, it's a bigger decrease at a lower rate, so 125,000, but that percentage decrease
Is less.
is less as the value of your home increases.
And that was the way the legislature intended it.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
And that's because of the market value exclusion.
Right.
Okay.
Anything
Anything
further?
else, gentlemen, questions you have?
I just want to comment to you, both of you, for bringing this. And although I didn't get the exact report I wanted, it was very good information here today.
Well, I'll follow up on some of those revenues and probably just send it out to you if I can draw some conclusions on those where we're at on the revenues. But they lag so far behind it, it just, it almost confuses things sometimes. but not for an accountant. It doesn't, they understand
Well,
those.
the revenues you have to look at on a line-by-line basis rather than in their entirety, because the taxes alone will throw it off, so you have to look at individually, line by line, so, which we do, but
The final judgment of my comments will probably come in March.
March, yes.
I hope they're good.
And I probably will say I told you. I've done it the last 3 years.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Now we have requests for letter of support for Veterans Treatment Court.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Excuse me. I have one other item on there. Thank you, Vicki. But the bullet point on the down on the bottom, the publishing of annual financial statements, we're finding that there's a common practice that over 50% of the Minnesota counties are not publishing the financial statements. And we had a short discussion on this, and it costs about $14,000 a year to publish those. And we were just kind of wanted to break it open make you aware of it, and
Not required?
by statute it
it is required, but
required.
it's common practice not to, and just to post them on the website.
Is that what you're saying? You probably think would be a good idea for us to do?
I guess that's your decision to make, but it's just to make you aware of that.
Well, yeah. Jenny and I have had a discussion about that too, from a legal standpoint, and we think we could, I mean, there might be a compromise where we could publish something to say, go to the website for the full, but this is something, I mean, you guys, we want you to think about that, because, see where we should go with it.
Chief, lobby against such a change as the publishing
Absolutely.
companies.
Yeah.
I'd like to hear what Jenny has to say, not necessarily today, but down the road.
I was going to say, I've reviewed the statute, and I brought it with me. I'd certainly be open to speaking with the board about my thoughts on the
You wanna
legality of
Discuss
that.
it today?
I'd rather do it after.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Might it be something that we should ask, 'cause if we have many here on Thursday night, we should ask how they feel about it? I mean, I don't have any idea how the general public feels about this financial statement, whether they look at it or...
Like I say, it still would be prepared, and our entire financial statements are currently on the website, and we could still provide for this summary, and I could prepare that and put it on the website, so it still would be out there and available. It just wouldn't be...
Sure.
Isn't that something they could request too?
Sure, yeah.
Without, I mean, not on the website, or they could get a hard copy, I suppose.
Sure.
Yeah.
Good.
Okay. Future meeting,
What's that?
a future discussion in future
Yeah.
meeting.
Yeah, it sounds like a good idea, but when you got the statute staring you in the face, it's a difficult
Well,
decision.
we'll see what Jenny has to say down the line.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, Her Honor Michelle Lawson, County Attorney Brian Melton, Don Kautzman, Drug Veterans Coordinator. Good morning and welcome.
It's just like old times.
Nice to have you with us, Your Honor.
Wait, we're in the presence of a judge now.
And I apologize for my attire. I actually
Where's your robe?
would have, well, and I told that to Don. I said, you know, I forgot we were going up to the board when I wore jeans today. So I suppose I could wear my robe. Yeah, no, we're going to pass on that. So, good morning.
Good morning.
Well, we're here today to talk about our Veterans Treatment Court that we've put a team together for and have been working on with Clay County and Becker County. Don is our Veterans Treatment Court Administrator, and he's going to update you on where we're at, and we're going to ask for your support.
So I was just going to let you all know kind of our status right now as we're going ahead with planning the Veterans Court. We have now completed the national training. We had 2 sessions of a couple days each. The first one was in September, the second one was in November. And with that complete, we also got to take a small team to Tulsa, Oklahoma at the end of October to have a site visit at their Veterans Court and watch and observe them for an entire day, which was also very helpful, I think, and beneficial to our team. With the training that we've completed now, we've moved on to the next step, which is getting approval from the Judicial Council, which is the head of the Minnesota Judicial Branch, basically. They have to sign off and approve all new specialty courts in Minnesota before they're allowed to go forward. So we're in the process now of putting together our application to them. And then once they approve, we can go forward with applying for federal grant funding. And because we attended the national training, we'll have, I think, a pretty good chance of getting those grants once they become available. But one of the things we need in our application to the Judicial Council is a letter or resolution of support from each county board. So our Veterans Court is going to be a multi-county court, so we need a support from Clay County and Becker County. So that's why we're here today, to ask you, and I passed around a draft of a resolution of support for you to take a look at, see if that meets with your approval.
Do you have any comments?
I think I would just add, really what Michelle and Donna already said, this is definitely a worthwhile project. I think it benefits the county, it'll benefit veterans, just giving us a better idea of being able to identify them, who we have that are veterans within the court system, the issues. I think Tulsa was a good event and a kind of an eye-opening experience for everybody that went, to just see the mental health issues that some of those individuals are dealing with, traumatic brain injury, PTSD, those types of things, and so and then the addiction issues that kind of accompany a lot of that. I mean, so those are a lot of things I think that we can work on and address, and so I think this is definitely a worthwhile effort and worth putting some effort into.
Tom is a member of our team. So, and the other thing is, there is just, since going to the training and, being out in the community and visiting with people a little bit about it, it's just really amazing the interest that's out there, especially on the part of people to participate in the program as mentors, so I mean, this is going to really draw from multiple parts of the community. And I mean, I just, at a recent bar meeting, I talked to a retired attorney who is a veteran, and it's just, oh my gosh, are you the one I talked to about this? This is just great. So it's just, it's exciting.
John?
I have a couple of questions. One is how are other specialty courts doing? We've heard about the juvenile drug court. What about domestic abuse court? Are we still doing that? I haven't heard anything about that one.
Yep. And I'm not the coordinator for that, but Judge Lawson is the judge.
Yeah, I'm the judge for domestic violence court.
Do you feel both are doing as predicted, as expected, as hoped?
Well, and domestic violence court is a very different perspective from the drug courts and those problem-solving courts. Domestic violence court, I think it is going well. It's big. I mean, we have a lot of participants in domestic violence court, which is something that we're trying to, and we've been tweaking it to try to make it more efficient, but we do it every Wednesday morning, and it's a full calendar on Wednesday mornings, let me tell you what. So.
The questions are, I would think the veterans thing would be also addressing homelessness. Isn't a lot of our veterans mental illness, homelessness, a lot of things like that?
I think that's the big piece. The other piece that's different, say, from drug court and else, is you also have the Veterans Administration involved in it. I mean, so that we can address homelessness, job efforts, a lot of different things that we can look to help that veteran beyond just the criminal system and some of the problems they're having, usually addiction issues, but get them some of those services that they probably are qualified to get but haven't really connected with, and try to help them get tied back into the community.
My last question is, do these specialty courts help reduce the backlog on the regular system? Is it just an addition? I mean, are you?
Well, they're cases we'd have anyway. I mean, they're people, excuse me, they're people who have come into the system. So, I mean, we'd have that case anyway, but the problem solving, like the drug court, veterans, the treatment court type model, definitely involves more court hearings for that particular case, so it does take more time. However, on the flip side of the coin, when we look at our recidivism rates relevant to our drug court cases, I mean, it's phenomenal. They work. I mean, they really are an avenue for meaningful, life-changing things to make folks productive members of society.
Reduce jail time.
Like I say, and ultimately cost is what, if you really look at, reduce recidivism, reduce costs both for jail or imprisonment where you're looking to get that person off their issues for addiction, drugs, alcohol, whatever else that caused them to get involved with the criminal justice system. Whether it's just the drugs or alcohol, or let's say it's maybe a theft or a burglary that they committed as part of everything else they're doing. So you're trying to get them off of that addiction or other issues. So.
And I can tell you too, for our drug court, we've had 54 graduates total in the program since we started, and of those, 46 of them, as of today, are still remaining law-abiding. So.
That's very good. That's very good. I would hope that this one will have as good success. Judge Lawson, do you have any idea on, like in drug court, you have so many cases that you can handle at a time. Have you established a number for that?
We have. And the training that we went through, part of it was developing our program as a team. And, we've been asking the jail to start asking the questions. Have you served in the military? Are you currently in the, to try to identify what our numbers are out there. And probably for lack of a better formula, at this point, we've selected the same numbers as we have for our drug court, and that would be 20 from Clay County and 10 for Becker County. Because A, that's a known, B, we know what that looks like because we've done it in drug court, and C, we really don't know what our numbers are yet, but as we move forward in the program, we'll adjust it.
Because you've offered to take that on yourself too, right?
Yep.
That's another one that will go into your portfolio for things to do.
Yes.
So I just kind of look at, man, that's a lot when you have 20 in drug court and you've got your domestic court and you got this one.
It's Wednesday.
Huh?
It's Wednesday.
That's just on a Wednesday?
Yep.
All of these?
We do domestic violence court Wednesday mornings. We do drug court staffing over the lunch hour on Wednesdays. Mm-hmm. Then we do drug court right after lunch, and we do our veterans treatment court after that.
Okay.
So.
Okay. Well, this came up a lot earlier, and it has my full support because I've seen the effects of the drug court, and I know there's enough veterans out there with issues that it'd be nice to steer them in the right direction.
When are you going to have your first case?
Well, we won't be able to go fully until we get the grant funding that we'll need, but I think we've talked about starting a pilot project, hopefully early next year. Maybe because we did that with drug court when we first started out. We had 2 people in Clay, 2 people in Becker, and kind of were able to see how it worked and work out some of the kinks and stuff by doing a pilot project. So.
Did you do the training here then? Did they come here to do the training?
They did, yep. They came right to the courthouse for both sessions, which was really nice.
Right? Did you have a comment?
Yeah, I was just, I've gone through some of the drug court sessions here, and I'm in full support of this stuff, but I just wonder whether you look at the discrimination, like if I go rob a bank, do I fit into, if I'm not a veteran, if I'm not a juvenile, I have to go through the regular court system, so are we discriminating against just a regular person robbing a bank, or, that's probably a dumb question, but, if I'm a veteran, I can go to the Veterans Court and get a better deal, or not a better deal, but go through a different program, or if I'm a juvenile, I can go to the juvenile system, if I'm the other court you have in the morning, domestic violence, excuse me, do I fit into that one? If I don't fit into any of those 3, I go to the regular court system.
I think it's very much a legitimate question. Well, first of all, one thing, as far as juvenile court is a completely separate, the legislature has always provided that we treat juveniles different within the justice system than adults. And our drug court is not a juvenile drug court. I just wanted to correct, I think we said something there. It's an adult drug court. Juvenile is completely different, and the laws of Minnesota provide very different treatment for children or for juveniles just because we believe that there's a process that has to happen when they're underage. So that's a very different thing than these specialty courts. If as Judge Lawson was saying, the reason behind looking at trying to take a look at some of these issues is really, I think a lot of it is economics, because we want to figure out people that have addiction issues that don't really have a propensity towards crime, but ultimately are involved in the system. We're trying to ferret them out. The worst of the worst, the ones, I was talking to somebody the other day, The ones that are really the drug dealers or the people that are preying on the addicted people, we want to get them in prison and get them out of the community as quick as possible. But those people that are suffering from addiction issues, and that's largely the issues they're dealing with, we want to try to figure out how to make them back into productive citizens and not sitting them in prison long term. I mean, so that's kind of the drug court side model. I think the question is very much legitimate. As a veteran, one of the first questions I ask, I don't want people saying, hey, why are we just taking veterans out of there? But I would say this, is there is some unique issues. After watching down in Tulsa and just watching some of these individuals, they've suffered through some issues, but largely a lot of times traumatic brain injury, post-traumatic stress, homelessness. They're coming off after being a veteran, and they're really not connecting back up with the community, and then ultimately going out and committing some types of crimes. We're not looking at the serious violent individuals. I mean, we're going to look to avoid them. I mean, if they're committing bank robberies, if they're committing serious assaults, I mean, those are things we're not going to necessarily be looking to get into a veterans court. I mean, it's again treatment for issues, drug addiction, alcohol addiction, some other crimes, if they're committing those. So it is important to look at those. The difference in, say, what, again, Judge Lawson was talking about domestic violence court, that's really more, call it an accountability court. It's really just making sure we have a court that can be more aggressive to monitor them, to make sure they're not out committing new crimes, that they're not having contact with that victim. I mean, so they're not getting any special treatment, they're getting additional treatment, really additional focus from the court that we want to do to make sure they're not going out and reoffending or assaulting that victim, that kind of thing. So I think there is a reason to do drug court and do veterans court and to give a little bit of special treatment to them or a special look, because we're trying to get them back and be productive citizens. The domestic violence court is very different. We just want to make sure that criminal element is really being focused on and has a heavy hand, whether it's probation or everybody else watching them, that they're not committing more crimes.
And frankly, working through what we're visioning as our Veterans Treatment Court model and working through what currently is our drug court model, in many cases, is more daunting, more difficult, and more challenging than simply being placed on traditional probation and being supervised through the Department of Corrections solely, because of the significant expectations that are placed on the participants in terms of the changes they need to make. Not always. I mean, many times if people are looking at prison sentence, it's easier to, or it's more desirable to work the program and to go through the program than to go to prison. But that, in some cases, not all cases, is the carrot at the end of the program.
But if I could comment too on kind of what Frank was talking about, for all the folks that end up going through the judicial system that would not qualify for the three types of courts that we're talking about here, they still have a fair process that they go through, and oftentimes there are still, not to the degree of what you as a judge might hand down to somebody in one of these courts. These are the things you have to do, right? Because you do some of that stuff with them.
Yes.
You put stipulations on them. This is what you have to do, this is what you have to do, this is what you have to do. That happens in a regular court setting as well.
Absolutely.
So I think there it becomes as to the ability to take those out that might need, as Brian was mentioning, that little extra work, that little extra push to help them and hopefully become as successful as what we've had on drug court, where you said, how many did you say?
46 out of 54.
46 out of 54 are not back in our jails. So we need to, that's the part that's good. But I, in terms of the ones that don't match those, I don't think they're neglected in their ability to try to be helped too.
No, and I mean, frankly, one of the major differences in the specialty courts versus the traditional court system is the intensity and the nature of the supervision and the ultimate expectation in terms of, successfully being discharged.
Move to approve the resolution of support.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Have a good holiday. It's good to see you all.
Your Wednesdays are going to have to start at 6 and go to midnight.
Well, we already start at 8:30 on Wednesdays and go right through the lunch hours, so those days get shorter and shorter.
Good to see you, Sean.
Thank you, good to see you all.
Bye, Brett.
The agenda is the appointment of new employee appreciation committee members, and they're listed here. If you would like, someone would like to make a motion? Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Carried. Brian, we ready for your update?
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't really have a lot to report on. One, I think, though, that is very important, and I know Commissioner Everett was with me on that, so he didn't report on it, maybe purposely. But he and I went over to the Prairie Lakes Municipal Solid Waste Authority, in short, the consortium, the joint powers that has been formed, reference the PERM incinerator and hauling our solid waste over there. They were really welcoming to us, and we talked about a lot of things, and frankly, we kind of highlighted the fact that what was it, Commissioner Campbell, about 5-6 years ago that you chaired a committee to look at the various possibilities. We pointed that out, that Clay County was very interested in exploring other ways of handling solid waste, and that we are very interested in taking the fines at the landfill, and that we were very interested in the possibility of joining that joint powers. And in fact, they were very enthusiastic and scheduled a meeting for December 13th for us to come back and meet with them. So I do have the joint powers agreement. I had given copies to Commissioner Everett and Commissioner Campbell, who are on the Solid Waste Advisory Committee for representing the board. But this is a big venture if we go this direction. I think it's really turns the corner of the way we plan to handle solid waste in the future. So it really does require some thought, I think, discussion. The advisory committee has discussed this for a year now, I think, and they unanimously support moving forward with this. So I think it's a big deal. I think we need to approach it properly and see if we want to make it happen. So I turn it back to Commissioner Everett if he had anything to report on in regards to it.
Well, it was a very positive meeting. I mean, I was impressed, first of all, just with their observing their meeting. They waited till the end before we had a chance to talk to them and so on. So we observed their whole meeting, and they, they're excited about what they're doing. The reports are positive about the progress that they're making, and they really want our participation. So they immediately, and we said we were interested, especially in dealing with the fines, but that we also wanted to send some garbage, exchange some garbage for burning there to extend the life of our landfill. They just were very accommodating, and they too feel that we can work out whatever logistic problems there are in the equipment or whatever the situation is that at this point doesn't seem to fit, that we'll be able to find a way to do that. So they proceeded right away to set a meeting for us to plan how we would negotiate, how we would become a partner, full partner with them, and they even suggested that they were seeing that maybe they would be, each of those counties would cut down on the percentage of garbage that they send to the burners so that we could send more of our garbage. And that's not what we were asking for at all, but they just seem very willing to negotiate, accommodate us in whatever way they can. So I thought it was very positive, and we look forward to a meeting on the 13th to negotiate how we would become part of that.
That about takes care of my report, Mr. Chair.
Anything else, gentlemen? No. We're adjourned.